Hospitals are places where life begins and ends. But what if there are sometimes endless lives? Tonight, I'll share 3 of the strangest, most terrifying, and scientifically unexplained hospital stories I've encountered in my many years of experience. From ghosts appearing in X-rays to invisible guards at the door, they're all real. So, do you think a patient can continue receiving treatment even after death? These stories show that not every shadow roaming the hospital corridors is a visitor, and some never truly leave. Each case harbors a mind-boggling secret, an unsolved mystery. These stories aren't just terrifying. They're also about the power of human survival and the actions that continue even after death. Are you ready to face tonight's truth? So sit back and listen, because here we go. Story 1. The Secret in Dr. Max's Office. I was in my final year of medical school, experiencing one of the turning points of my career, my neurology internship at Riverside Medical Center. Dr. Max Sullivan, one of the hospital's best and most experienced neurologists, had been working there for 20 years, and I had deep respect for him. He made significant contributions to our development. I always looked forward to having one-on-one conversations with him and learning from his experiences. But I had no idea at the time that I would spend one of the most mysterious nights of my life in his office. Dr. Max's office was on the 3rd floor of the hospital, at the end of the corridor. It was a room from the 1970s, as if time had stood still. The heavy wooden desk, antique cabinet, and shelves filled with yellowed medical books gave the room a nostalgic feel. The old X-rays and brain scans of former patients hanging on the white-striped walls whispered that this was not just a workspace, but also a museum of lived stories. That Thursday evening, we were working on a challenging case. Margaret White, an elderly Alzheimer's patient, had kept us in the office for hours. Despite suffering from severe memory loss, to the point where she couldn't even recognize her own family, she recounted astonishingly detailed memories of the past. Dr. Max muttered to himself, "This patient is very interesting. She has erased her own memories, but it's as if she's living someone else's memories." We hadn't noticed how time had passed while reviewing her file. It was almost midnight. Dr. Max's fatigue was evident in his eyes. "You should go rest now," he said. "I'll stay a little longer." As I left the office, my eye caught the X-rays on his desk. One that had been neatly arranged moments ago had shifted slightly, as if someone had touched it. Perhaps I was hallucinating from fatigue, I thought. Around 11:30, as I was walking down the corridor, I heard whispers coming from Dr. Max's office. It was clear that 2 people were discussing something. One was Dr. Max's voice. The other was an elderly woman's voice. Did Margaret come here? I thought. At this hour, patient visits were not allowed according to hospital rules. I approached the door with nervous steps. After getting a little closer, I gave in to my curiosity and knocked on the door. "Dr. Max, is everything okay?" The conversation suddenly stopped. "Come in," Dr. Max called out. When I entered the room, he was alone, sitting at his desk. Was Dr. Max talking to himself? "Is anyone else here?" I asked. "No, why do you ask?" "I heard voices. I thought you were talking." A strange expression appeared on Dr. Max's face, a mixture of anxiety and fear that I couldn't quite understand. I was alone. Maybe the sounds were echoing, but the atmosphere in the office had changed. There was a cold breeze, and the papers on the desk were scattered, as if someone had left in a hurry. He was aware of this situation as well, but neither of us could say anything. Suddenly, Dr. Max, as if to distract me, said, "I was reviewing Margaret's file. It's a very strange case. The woman is describing events from the 1950s, but her birth year is 1960. How could she know these details?" At 12:15 a.m., I was walking through the corridor again. This time, the whispers were clearer than before, and I decided to listen without making a sound. Dr. Max's voice was clear. "Yes, I remember Margaret. I lived through those days too." The old woman's voice replied, "Doctor, you were very young back then. Now you're old, but you're still the same compassionate doctor." This conversation had blown my mind. It felt like it had shaken my entire body. Margaret was on the 5th floor. It was impossible for Dr. Max to be in his office at this hour. I slowly opened the door. Dr. Max was speaking, looking at the empty gray chair across from him, as if someone were there. "Margaret, you were a very special patient to me," he said. "When you first saw me in 1975, I was very young. So were you. When I first noticed the early signs of Alzheimer's, I was still an intern." Without giving him a chance to react, I suddenly turned the doorknob and entered. "Dr. Max, who are you talking to?" He turned to me in surprise. "Margaret," he said. "Can't you see her?" He pointed to the empty chair. "There's no one there, Dr. Max." He narrowed his eyes and looked at the chair. "That's very strange," he muttered. "She was just here a moment ago." The next morning, I examined Margaret's file more closely out of curiosity. Indeed, in 1975, when she was a young girl, she had met Dr. Max. At the time, Dr. Max was an intern and had diagnosed Margaret with Alzheimer's for the first time, forming a strong bond between them. However, there was an even more surprising note in the file. Margaret had wanted to see Dr. Max before she passed away in 1995, but the doctor was out of town that day and was unable to say his final goodbye. This had only strengthened the bond between them. When I spoke to Dr. Max, I explained the situation. "Do you remember Margaret?" I asked. "Of course," he said with a sad smile. "She was my first serious case. She was a very young, warm-hearted, and beautiful woman. I regret not being able to be with her when she passed away." "I think she came to say goodbye to you that night," I said. A small smile appeared on Dr. Max's face, along with a sense of peace. Perhaps Margaret was always a sensitive soul. She may have thought of me even after her death. After that night, Dr. Max seemed more at peace. He had finally said the goodbye he couldn't say. But the real goodbye he couldn't say had only grown deeper within him. Some patient-doctor relationships continue even after death. These strong emotional bonds sometimes cause even ghosts to return to say thank you. Remember, sometimes the patients you lose in hospitals may come to say goodbye. Instead of being afraid, show respect. Story 2. Waiting at the emergency room door. As a security guard at Central Hospital, I was on night duty at the emergency room entrance. I had been doing this job for 5 years and had seen all kinds of situations. In the middle of the night, there were people crying in the corridors, people suddenly having seizures, dead people waking up in the morgue, and some sudden disappearances. I had experienced it all. However, what I experienced that night was the most terrifying, unforgettable experience etched into my memory. The emergency room door was an automatic door equipped with sensors. It opened when someone approached and closed when they moved away. This was a commonplace, unchanging fact known to everyone. At night, when the hospital was quiet, the door remained closed and only opened when someone with a genuine need or staff arrived. This system worked safely and smoothly. That Saturday night was as quiet as usual. By 10:30 p.m., the last patient had completed all procedures and left. Only the on-call doctor, Dr. Wilson, and Nurse Jessica remained in the emergency room. I was sitting at the security desk, sipping my coffee and watching the cameras. Sometimes, I would also glance at Instagram stories. Everything was proceeding as usual. At 11:45 p.m., the emergency room door suddenly opened. I looked outside, but there was no one there. The door remained open for a few seconds, then closed on its own. It must be a sensor malfunction, I thought. Sometimes a strong wind or a small animal could accidentally trigger the sensor. About 5 minutes later, the door opened again. Again, there was no one outside. However, this time the door remained open longer than before. It was as if someone invisible was trying to get inside. I felt uneasy. Something strange was going on. I had a strange feeling inside. Unable to relax, I got up and walked toward the door. There was no movement outside. The parking lot was empty too. There weren't many people coming and going at this hour anyway. I checked the sensor. It was working normally. It must be a technical problem, I said to myself. But that strange feeling, the feeling that someone was there, was gnawing at me. And these paranormal events that occurred during the night shift were not things that could be easily dismissed and forgotten. At 12:30 a.m., the door opened for the third time. This time I looked more closely. At the threshold of the door, a nearly transparent shadow appeared. Suddenly, all the hairs on my body stood on end, and my insides grew cold. It was something very faint, barely noticeable, but resembling a human silhouette. My heart was pounding in my chest. "Who's there?" I called out. As I approached the door, the shadow moved. It walked toward the emergency room, but there was no sound of footsteps or creaking. A breeze passed by me, as if someone had slipped past me, but it wasn't visible. Still, I had felt it. I told Dr. Wilson what had happened. "Let's check the cameras," he said. "Maybe there's a recording." We went to the security room and looked at the recordings. The strangest thing was that the cameras showed nothing. The door was opening and closing, but there was no image showing why. It was as if the doors were opening and closing on their own. "The system must be malfunctioning," Dr. Wilson said, but he was as tense as I was. "It's very quiet tonight. Maybe that's why we're paying more attention to things like this." He tried to reassure me, but we were both uneasy. I could sense the fear in his eyes. At 1:15 a.m., Nurse Jessica ran over to us. "Someone went into room 3. She gasped. "There's no patient record, but someone is there, sitting on the examination table." My suspicion deepened. The three of us went into the room together. The only thing we saw when we entered was that no one was there. However, the examination table was slightly disheveled. There was an elderly woman, Jessica said, in a trembling voice. She was wearing blue hospital pajamas. She was very pale and kept saying, "Doctor, look at me." She wanted an IV, but her name wasn't in the system. Dr. Wilson immediately sat down at the computer and began checking old patient records. "I found a Dorothy Williams," he said. "She came here about 6 months ago with breathing difficulties. She was 82 years old." He paused and read the file more carefully. "She passed away last year in this very room." 3. We all felt a chill run down our spines. We looked at each other, trying to figure out what was going on. "The same room?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "Dorothy Williams, 82 years old. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Her condition was very serious when she last came in. She passed away in room 3. "What else does the file say?" I asked. Dr. Wilson continued reading in a nervous tone. The patient was very anxious. She kept saying, "No one is visiting me." She wanted her family to come, but no one could. She passed away alone. After that day, the emergency room door began opening regularly at the same time every night. I had grown accustomed to this situation. I knew Dorothy was coming. Sometimes when I looked at room number 3, even if it was empty, I felt like someone was there. Nurse Jessica had also gotten used to this situation. "Dorothy is here," she would say. "She's come for a checkup." She's still worried about her health. Dr. Wilson had also come to terms with this situation, albeit belatedly. "Maybe she's still looking for treatment," he would say. This reality, which had initially baffled us, had now become ordinary. One night, when the door opened, I decided to call out to Dorothy. "Dorothy, we're here," I said. "We want to help you." The door stayed open longer, as if she were listening to me. Then it slowly closed. I couldn't believe we had accepted this, and were acting accordingly. It was a chilling, bone-chilling reality. But after that night, the door started opening less often. I have some advice for new colleagues working in the emergency room. Sometimes old patients can come back. Especially those who died alone may still be seeking attention and compassion. Don't be afraid. Show understanding. Like Dorothy, they just want not to be forgotten. But not everyone is like Dorothy. Behind those white curtains, there might be a dark truth. Still, keep being cautious. Story 3. The image in the X-ray room. I had been working as a radiology technician at Mercy General Hospital for 8 years. During that time, I had taken thousands of X-rays, but the images I took that week completely changed my professional life and my outlook on life. There are some images that, no matter how hard you try, you cannot erase from your mind. This was one of them. Our X-ray room was located in the basement of the hospital, away from the noise and in an isolated area. Being in the basement, away from the busy emergency department, was somewhat comforting to me. We were equipped with modern, digital systems, and the results were immediately saved to the computer. As long as we didn't experience any technical issues, everything worked perfectly. That Monday morning, my first patient was Mrs. Johnson, 65 years old. She was there for a routine chest x-ray. Everything seemed normal. "Breathe in, hold it," I said, and completed the scan. When I checked the image on the computer, I noticed something odd. Behind Mrs. Johnson, there was another almost transparent silhouette. It was as if there were two people in the room, but there was only Mrs. Johnson there. I was certain she was alone, because it was a well-known fact that the patient had to be alone in the room due to radiation exposure. It must be a technical error, I thought, and repeated the scan. The same silhouette was there in the second scan, and this time it was even clearer. It looked like an old man, standing right behind Mrs. Johnson. What I was experiencing seemed incredibly frightening to me. "Mrs. Johnson, is there anyone behind you?" I asked. "No, dear, I'm alone," she said in surprise. She sensed that something was wrong. I checked the device again, and everything seemed normal. However, in the third shot, the silhouette had become much clearer. The facial features were discernible. A thin man in his 70s. He resembled Mrs. Johnson's relative. Suddenly, my face had turned pale, and Mrs. Johnson had noticed the cold expression on my face. My heart had started beating rapidly. "Mrs. Johnson, did your husband pass away?" I asked hesitantly. "Yes, dear. Harold died 3 years ago. I miss him so much," she said in a sad voice. It was clear that the silhouette in the x-ray belonged to a man. "What did Harold look like?" "Slender, tall. He was very handsome," she replied. I gathered my courage and showed her the x-ray. As soon as she saw the image, her eyes filled with tears. "That's Harold. Is it him? Is it really him?" she whispered. She was crying, but I couldn't tell if the tears were from sadness or fear. I called Dr. Peterson, the radiologist, and showed him the x-ray. "What could this be, Doctor?" Dr. Peterson studied it carefully. "Very strange. It doesn't look like a technical error. It's as if there really were two people." "But that's impossible," he said in astonishment. After that day, Mrs. Johnson came back a couple more times to have x-rays taken. I didn't know if it was to be sure. Every time she came, Harold's silhouette appeared in the image. Sometimes clearer, sometimes blurrier, but it was always there. I felt that Mrs. Johnson was hiding something, because her attitude had changed since the first time she saw it. Something we didn't know was happening. "Harold is with me," she told everyone. Soon, similar situations began to appear in other patients. Mr. Davis's x-ray showed his deceased wife Anna, and little Tommy's x-ray showed his grandfather Jim. They were always in the background, as if protecting their loved ones. The device technicians came and checked the system repeatedly. "The system is working perfectly," they said. "We don't understand how these images are forming." I didn't understand either, but not knowing the reason was beginning to frighten me. I explained the situation to Dr. Robert Geller. He said there was no other solution we could try at the moment. We didn't know what these spirits wanted from us perhaps. They just wanted to be with their loved ones. The most deeply affecting incident involved 7-year-old Emma. She had come in with a suspected broken arm. On the x-ray, the silhouette of a young woman appeared. Emma's mother, Sarah, screamed in shock as soon as she saw the image. "That's my mother, Emma's grandmother. She died 2 years ago." "Did Emma miss her grandmother very much?" I asked. "Very much," said Sarah. "She talks about her all the time and says Grandma is watching over me." In the x-ray, the grandmother's silhouette was in a position as if she were hugging Emma. This image surprised us all even more. So, could deceased people be seen through this x-ray? Dr. Peterson said, "This situation cannot be explained medically. At the moment, we have no solution for this situation. Patients react differently when they see these images, but they don't cause any problems. Maybe it's a good thing." He might have been right. Some patients took their x-rays and left the hospital with a blank but content expression on their faces. One day, Mrs. Johnson came for the last time. Harold's silhouette was very faint in the x-ray. "Is that normal?" I asked. "Yes, dear," said Mrs. Johnson. "I saw him in my dream last night. Live in peace now," he said. "I'll always be with you, but I have to go now." I think we said goodbye. After that last x-ray, Harold's silhouette never appeared again. Mrs. Johnson wasn't sad. "He's at peace now," she said. "It's enough for me to know that he's watching over me." X-rays in radiology don't just show bones. They also show the soul. The connection between people and what they've lost can be so different that they can remain in the image, even after death. I admit that this is something most of us would find frightening, but there is also something to be respected about it. Because when people face their fears, they can sometimes be happy afterward.